The other life-changing lesson with lashes for me was learning that you should look down into a mirror when you are putting lashes on. Welcome back to my channel. For today's video, I'm going to be sharing my most life-changing makeup lessons / tips that I've learned along the way. I know that when I first started doing makeup, I was making a ton of mistakes. I couldn't figure out why I couldn't get my makeup to look the way I wanted it to look, and just learning a few different tweaks here and there really helped to get me to the point where I feel really confident in my makeup skills. I am in no way, shape, or form a full-on beauty guru or a makeup artist or anything. I just really love makeup, and I have friends who tend to tell me that they love the way I do my makeup. So I thought I'd share some of those tips and tricks with you guys here in this video. But as always, you guys, please make sure to give this video a big thumbs up. Also, don't forget to leave me a comment down below. Say hello, or even better, leave a comment of one of the most life-changing makeup lessons that you've learned in your life, and we'll go ahead and jump on into it. So the very first thing that I want to mention here is actually primer. For the longest time, I wasn't using a primer. I didn't understand why you would need to, but once I started using primer, I realized that my makeup was lasting longer, my foundation was going on so much smoother, and just the overall finish of my face looked so much more polished than it did before. So really starting out with a good primer that is right for your skin, because there's a ton out there. So make sure to find a primer. You know, if you're oily, find a mattifying one. If you are dry, find a hydrating one. If your skin is lacking a little bit of luster, find one that's going to give you a nice glow. Whatever you need for your skin, prep it before you start on your foundation. That way you have the best possible chance of your skin looking flawless and beautiful underneath your makeup. Another makeup lesson that I learned was actually to match my foundation to my body. For the longest time, I was trying to match my foundation to my face, and I didn't realize that that was making it look totally off. But once I started seeing people talking about how they're matching their foundation to their neck or their chest, it clicked for me, because your face isn't always the same color as the rest of your body, and if you're doing your makeup, you might as well just even all of that out. So really take the time when you are going to color match yourself for a new foundation. Make sure that if you are color matching yourself, you are checking it on your neck or on your chest, or if someone else is color matching for you, they're not doing it on your face, they're using your neck or your chest. The next trick that totally changed my life is using a wet beauty blender. So at first, I never really used a makeup sponge because I was like, why? This seems like it's not gonna leave a good finish. But once I learned that you're actually supposed to wet your beauty blender, and I mean really wet it, get it under the faucet, hold it under the water for like 30 seconds and just keep squeezing it until it's nice and soaked, and then remove it from the water, squeeze out as much water as you can, and then squeeze it in a paper towel to absorb even more water. And that is actually the perfect consistency for your beauty blender or any makeup sponge. It should essentially double in size and feel really soft and really easy to work with. And when you do it damp, it's not only gonna blend your foundation flawlessly, but it's also going to soak up the excess product so that you don't get too much of a cake face without soaking up all of the product. It'll leave the perfect amount of foundation on the beauty blender for you. That way your base is looking amazing. My next beauty tip that changed my life was balancing out my concealer. I didn't know how to use concealer for the longest time, so then finding out about the triangle under my eyes was a game changer. But for a while I was just doing that, so I just had these light patches underneath my eyes. And when I finally found out that you should also highlight your chin, bridge of your nose, and forehead, that was just such a game changer for my face. Then in that way, my face started to balance out a lot more. My makeup looked a lot more natural on me because I was highlighting the higher points of my face and also balancing out those two bright triangles under my eyes so that those didn't just stand out as some weird light patches that don't blend into the rest of my look. And another tip that has to do with concealer is actually how I set my concealer. For the longest time, I was just dusting powder underneath my eyes, but when I saw girls setting their concealer with a wet sponge and powder, and I saw the finish of it, I was like, I have to give that a try, and I have literally never turned back. It makes your under eye look so flawless. You definitely want to make sure to pat out your concealer with a wet sponge without powder first, just to make sure you get all the creases down, and then look up as you're powdering with the wet sponge. That way you don't accidentally set creases, because I will tell you, setting your concealer with this method is gonna lock it in place. It will not budge all day, I promise you. So you definitely want to make sure that you are looking up to avoid creases and that you have smoothed out any creases that were there to begin with. So for my eyes, the biggest trick that I learned, honestly, was to use a transition shade. I didn't know about this for the longest time. I was just slapping colors all over my eye without really any strategy, but learning to do a transition color, which is something that'll help blend all of the colors that you're gonna put into your eyeshadow look. I didn't realize that starting out with that base is really what made eyeshadow looks look so blended. That is a huge step that I didn't know I was supposed to be taking, and since doing that, my eyeshadow game has gone up like 10 levels. Another makeup lesson that I learned much more recently than I care to admit is cutting my crease with a white concealer. I was using like regular nude concealer for a long time. At times I wasn't even trying to cut my crease with any type of concealer or primer, and I couldn't figure out why my cut creases weren't looking as sharp as everyone else's were. Then I discovered using white concealer to cut my crease, and that was just such a game changer. It really does create that contrast between all of your eyeshadow in your crease and on your outer V and the eyeshadow that you're looking to use on your lid. It creates that defined line and that defined color shape that's going to give you a much more prominent cut crease, which is probably what you're looking for if you are trying to cut your crease at all. My next beauty lesson that I learned for my eyes was tight lining. Talk about changing your life. I have very short, stubby, thin lashes, and learning to tight line honestly totally changed the way my eye makeup looks because it filled in all of the gaps for me. It is kind of scary the first time you do it because you're like, really? I'm supposed to draw like all the way up in between my lashes, but it makes such a difference and it's such an impact, especially when you don't really have any lashes like I do. And it also helps to later on make your winged liner and your false lashes just blend better into your eye so that there's no gaps or anything like that that'll give it away. And then speaking of false lashes, there are 3 life-changing makeup lessons that I wanted to share with you. The first one is to actually cut your lashes. I was trying to put on the strip as is for the longest time, and I have small eyes. I was always running into issues with my lash falling off on the outer or the inner edge, and it just being really, really uncomfortable. It wasn't until I learned that I needed to measure and cut my lashes for my eyes that I started to really like to wear false lashes because they didn't feel uncomfortable anymore. They felt, honestly, at this point, I don't even feel them on me anymore once the glue dries. So if you are struggling with false lashes, feeling really uncomfortable, and you haven't tried measuring them and trimming them to your eye shape, definitely give that a try. I promise you it's gonna make a huge difference. And then another thing that made a huge difference with me for false lashes was actually waiting for my glue to dry. I didn't know that lesson for the longest time, and again, I hated wearing false lashes because of it. Back when I was a dancer and I'd have to get ready for dance competitions, I would dread having to do false lashes. I hated false lashes with a passion because I was always trying to put it on when the glue was still wet and it was sliding everywhere and I couldn't get it to stay, and again, it ended up feeling so uncomfortable. But you should always wait about, for me, my rule of thumb is about 90 seconds actually. I know a lot of directions will say 60 seconds. Wait 90 seconds because at that point it'll get a really, really good tackiness and it'll almost be just like a sticker. So you'll just stick it right on and it'll stick right where you put it. And speaking of sticking your lashes on, the other life-changing lesson with lashes for me was learning that you should look down into a mirror when you are putting lashes on. I'm not talking about looking down at a slight angle. I'm talking about making your mirror almost perpendicular to the floor and looking down into it. That is going to make your eye slope downward so that way you can see your lash line clearly and you're going to be able to see where you want to place your false lashes, and it'll be just an easier path to get the lashes on because since you're looking down, you can place your false lashes right on top of that lash line without interference from your real lashes. Okay, and the next trick that I wanted to share with you guys is cleaning up your contour with baking. I know that that might seem like a no-brainer to a lot of people, but I actually have talked to a lot of girls who didn't realize that you can do that. Just take some powder, draw a line on underneath your contour if it gets out of control, or your bronzer, and it'll clean that line right back up so that it won't look muddy. It'll look like that sharp angular line that you were looking for in the first place. My next life-changing makeup lesson was actually to put blush on my nose and on my forehead. I wasn't doing that for years and years and years. In fact, this year was the year that I started doing that. I'd seen people do it before. I really didn't put two and two together about what it does, but when you do that, it ties in your whole face together, because you know, you can walk out with rosy cheeks and then the rest of your face is like just neutrals and browns and it looks okay, but going that extra mile to put just a little bit of pinkness back into other areas of your face will make it look like your blush is actually a natural flush. And my last beauty lesson that changed my life actually kind of came into my life when I got really into liquid lipsticks, because you have to be very precise when you draw on your lips with a liquid lipstick, and it was actually drawing an X on your Cupid's bow to start your upper lip shape. Doing that is gonna measure out your Cupid's bow in a much more accurate way as opposed to trying to freehand it. And besides it making your Cupid's bow look sharp and in its natural spot, it's also gonna start out the shape for the rest of your upper lip, which is much harder to draw than your lower lip. So I'm sure you can definitely use all the help you can get, but drawing that X will help guide you on rounding out the rest of your lip and connecting it to your bottom lip. But anyways, those were my top makeup lessons slash tips and tricks that have changed my life. I hope you guys enjoyed that. Again, if you have any tips that you want to share with anyone, please feel free to leave them in a comment down below. Don't forget to subscribe to me if you're not already. Join my family here on YouTube, and also follow me on Instagram and on Twitter. Both handles are linked down below in the description box, and I will see you guys in my next video. Bye.